to the Services Asset Committee meeting. So, we'll get straight into it. So, any apologies? I don't have any apologies at all. There being none. Leave of absence. Anybody require any leave of absence? Nope. And is there any conflict of interest with any of the agenda items that we have in front of us today? No conflict of interest. There's no public forum today. I believe there's no extraordinary urgent items either. Nobody's got anything there. So I go straight to confirmation of the minutes, which was held on the 1st of February, I believe. So I'm happy to move that. Do I have a second for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Rutten-Claw. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So we'll go straight into our first report, which is the health and safety update. So we'll go straight on to that. And Nick, I presume you'll be starting this report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just waiting for Terry to join us, hopefully. Fiona, do you know if we have her on the line?
The absence of
I'd go
Kerry.
to report 2, Mr. Chair.
Well, just one moment. In the absence of Kerry, are you able to speak on this report, Nick, or do you prefer to wait?
I think I'd prefer to wait.
Okay.
Terry, she's done some work on it yesterday, so
Okay.
happy to move to the second report if you like.
Okay, good as gold. We'll go straight into 7.2, which is the road operation. And we'll go straight to Hartley. I see you're there, so I presume you'll be presenting this paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass over to Rob. He's also joined the meeting. Head there.
Okay, Rob.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, councillors. Road operations report, January 2022. I'll take the report as read and just cover off some highlights in there. Of particular interest is the successful start to the water sealing and dust suppression project with 26 sites sealed, totaling 4.5 kilometres. So all those sites are now completed and curing, still under speed restrictions. So we're still monitoring those sites and intend to report back to council in the coming months when we can analyse the finished surfaces and the like. RFSs significantly down on last year. There was some bad weather last year, which increased those RFSs previously. Spending for the maintenance is tracking well at 7.5 million to the end of January, so we're right on target there. Capital program is all the capital rehabilitation projects are underway. Some completed. The only exception to that is the 2-chain road safety improvement, which is going to start later in the month. Surfacing and pavement marking all well underway and on target. And bridges wise, we have the 4 major structures in. Dipton Flat is open, just with the smaller bridges at McDonald Road and Grey Road to be completed before the end of January. I think that concludes my summary. If there's any questions, be happy to take any.
Thank you for that, Rob. I see Councillor Rutten-Claw, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, through you, the Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Rob, for your report this morning. I just want to congratulate the team on advancing the dust suppression project to where you've got it to today. I do have a couple of questions though. After our last service and asset meeting, we asked for a list of the people in our area or the Southland district that had applied OTTSEAL and had, so I'm wondering where that list is because we haven't received it yet. And also there was a discussion around the people that didn't make it, that didn't have the opportunity to put it down this season, and at that stage they hadn't been contacted, and I'm wondering where we were with that as well. And if you wanted to ask those 2 questions first, then I've got another question as well, please.
Yep, sure. Hartley, do you want to cover that off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to cover that off. So, yeah, in terms of the list, apologies, haven't circulated to everybody. There were some councillors that I have circulated to. I thought they were the ones that specifically asked, but I will, following this meeting, circulate it to everybody. It is the total district list, so apologies for that. In terms of the contacting, yeah, everybody's has been contacted, because one of the questions that we went back and asked was those that didn't make the initial cut, when we were revisiting how far we were getting through the program and considering the financial aspects, was would they still be interested so late on the season? So that was a question that had gone back to several of those that were sort of on the fringe, I suppose, of making the list or not. So they've definitely been contacted.
Well, thank you, Hartley. Did anyone take up on that after you contacted?
No, not that I'm aware of. We've also, so we also ran into a position now where with the contractor, and we don't have any more contractor capacity in essence to deliver any more for this season.
Okay, just I might ask a question too there and come back to you, Councillor Rattenclaw. So just confirmation, everybody that had made contact with Southland District Council with regards to dust suppression, they have been contacted with and communicated with. That's one of the key aspects.
Yep. Everybody's
Okay.
had some form of communication.
Right. Okay. Margie, you had another question.
Thank you. I just had a thought. Going forward, I wondered if there'd been any thoughts about keeping the speed limit slower than the 100 k's on the properties or the roading that has been sealed with Otter Seal. And I'm using Sandy Brown Road as a test case. Its longevity, it was reduced to 80 k's initially. It's now down at 60 kilometres. And I just think the longevity and the significant investment here ratepayers have put into this. For example, Thompson's Crossing, I know properties that have had Otter Seal put down. My concern is as soon as those big trucks start hitting it at 100 k's, what is the lifespan going to be? Has there been any research done? I'm just looking out for the longevity of this project and Otter Seal for our ratepayers.
So,
Hartley?
yep. So through Mr. Chair, short answer is there's no easy way, because it would require a change in our speed limit bylaw for those to be permanently reduced. While the work's being carried out and they're curing, we can have those temporaries up, but once that work's completed, then we don't have any mechanism without changing the speed limit bylaw of retaining those temporary speeds there for, in essence, perpetuity.
So if I may, during the settling down period, there is a speed restriction, and what's that? Is that about 30 k's or something like that, is it? Because I know it's around here about 30 k's. It's
50 kilometres once the physical works have been carried out.
Yeah, so we can keep that restriction on there for quite some time, can't we?
Yeah, so it depends on the site, number of volume of traffic, anywhere from probably around the 3 to 6 month period.
Yep. So therefore, we could try and, as an option that you may need to consider, and whether it's possible, is to keep those restrictions there as long as possible, and see when about a bylaw can be changed and what sort of time frame that would be. Because I know there's a bit of work involved in going through a bylaw change, but let's see how long we can actually keep those restrictions up, because that would certainly address the issue that Councillor Rattenclaw has raised, because it's quite valid. No point putting that auto seal there and then trucks hitting it at 100 k's. It's just going to rip it up, because you've only got sections rather than a complete road. So it's going on and off. So those ends are certainly going to be tested.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, it's a good opportunity, I think, when we give a bit of a debrief on how the season's gone, learnings, challenges that we have faced. When we do discuss that with councillors, good opportunity to throw that in the mix and have a good discussion about that as well.
Yep, good idea. Councillor Rattenclaw, we'll go back to you. Do you have one more question?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think advancing it would be great, and appreciate everyone's comments around it. Thank you.
Okay. I see quite a few hands up, so I will get to you all. First is Councillor Harbour.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering on your bridges. Everything else has been looking pretty good there, Rob and Hartley, but your bridges, is there any forward thinking gone towards employing or starting off local contracting gangs so they can carry on and work their way up into building these bridges for the Southland District Council? I see the two contractors we've got, one's at Hamilton and one's, well, I'm not too sure where Fulton Hogan are based. They used to be Dunedin, but I fear they're probably in Australia by now. I just think it's a pretty good opportunity to be looking at it. So I just wondered if there's been any work done along those lines. Because like at the moment, we're doing everything from culverts, small bridges up to major bridges. So yeah, the opportunity is there, I believe, to go back to where we were 30 or 40 years ago. We had a whole lot of local bridge building gangs in the area and spending money in the area instead of spending money elsewhere.
I will ask management to comment, of course, but just a comment that,
yeah.
Just a comment. I mean, the people that are attending to our bridges and our roads, I think majority of them actually live within our district. They're not brought out from Australia to do the work.
Oh, no.
So I think they actually live within our communities. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind. And 30 years ago, we didn't spend a lot of money on our bridges, and hence we're faced with the problem that we've got now.
Precisely.
And for economics of scale, once you're set up to deal with a number of bridges, you actually become very efficient at it. But anyway, I'll let either Hartley or Matt make comment on that. I might be on the wrong track, but anyway, Matt, you may wish to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. No, look, Mr. Chairman, you did right. There's definitely an element of specialist resource and capacity within the region that needs to be considered. And you're also right in that the majority of a significant amount of number of the bridges that have been constructed in recent years has certainly been constructed by local resource and local labour force. And the other comment I'd note is that we are constantly refining our procurement approaches, not just in relation to our bridges, but across our entire program of works, in order to ensure that we are appropriately considering local resource capacity and providing locals a really robust opportunity to secure work if the resource exists in local communities. So when I talk about, when I use the phrase local, that means different things in relation to different work disciplines. So when I talk about our program of bridges and I talk to local, I'm referring regionally to Southland. When we talk about our community facilities program of works and we use the term local, we're thinking very much sub-community level, local community board area in the way that we procure and package our work. So look, that's a constant balance, and we're continuously, as I say, refining our procurement approach, considering how we might balance local resourcing with also some of the other well-beings. And we're seeing that procurement framework mature nationally, and we're keeping an eye on that to ensure that we're procuring in the most appropriate way to meet those parameters and needs for our communities.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Harper, you okay with that? You've got your response?
Just as long as it's on the horizon and being considered, that's good.
Yep. Yep, that's
Thank
all
you.
part of that procurement process. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just getting back to the Otter Seal, and congratulations to the team for completing 26 sites. So, I'm just interested in looking forward to next season. So, what pertinent lessons have been learnt from the work we did this year that we can take forward into next year with achieving greater efficiencies or capacity? So, yeah, just around that, it's a great initiative, but can we improve upon it?
Would it be fair to say that, very good question, Councillor Douglas, of course, would it be fair to say that Hartley's previous comments indicated a good debrief after this season, and we identify all those learnings, and as you've identified, Councillor Douglas, is efficiencies, better gains. So I would be very pleased to make sure that that debrief covers those particular aspects at that time, because I'm not sure whether staff would be in that position just right now.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, yeah, that would be my preference. As I said, is definitely collate that information, have a good session on it.
Yeah, so we have to make sure that that is on the agenda and it stays on the agenda, and that we do receive that opportunity to discuss the dust suppression. All right, Councillor Douglas.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Ford.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree with all those previous comments on the dust suppression, but I'm conscious that whilst we would like to replicate it again next year and beyond, we really need to ensure that we look after this. We don't want it to stuff up, and I would like to think we're going to get 3 or 4 years at least out of it. So that speed thing is a great element of how we manage that, because we're always looking for money, and we best look after this. So that would be my comments on longevity, if we could stretch it as far as possible, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ford, and I couldn't agree more with you. I would be very disappointed if it only lasts 3 years. I think that with the experience so far with Otto Seal, it certainly lasts a good 10 to 15 years, but it's certainly the impact of speed is certainly need to be considered. So the matter that Councillor Rattenclaw raised earlier on will certainly assist with the longevity of the Otto Seal. Good points. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to endorse the previous comments and speakers about the speed and protecting those roads as well. I think it's really important. I've just got a comment on the Waimea Alliance. I just wanted to acknowledge the really good work that team have done over the years in the area here. They've quite often we pick holes in these reports and we look for things that are wrong, but I just actually want to point out something that's right. And yeah, the communication, the responsiveness, the great work that they've done has it's been noticed by myself and other members in the community. So just a thumbs up to the Waimea Alliance.
Well said, Rob, and fully endorse those comments. Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is I endorse looking at work around the speed limits, but I wonder if in the meantime we're able to write to the trucking companies and advise them where the Otter Seal has gone down and ask them to consider their speed in those areas. And secondly, just a question from a ratepayer is about the effectiveness of the Otter Seal where it's joining on to the seal, onto the bitumen. So someone who may be considering funding that themselves because they probably don't meet criteria otherwise, but is there an issue where it joins in terms of wear and longevity?
Mr. Chair, our experience to date has been that it doesn't have an impact. We've had up Tiana Way where it does join up onto an existing seal. It seems to have performed fine over the years that we've had that site.
Thank you.
Mayor Tong.
Good morning, everybody. Not a question, just in total support of Councillor Scott's comments. That's where I was going. Significant amount of work, significant amount of money, time, etc., has gone into this, and fantastic that we're ahead of the game, probably down because of the weather. So just a big thumbs up, as Councillor Scott said.
Excellent, thank you. See, Councillor Harper, you've got your hand raised. Do you have another question?
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Chairman, just a comment. Me and Tom might be able to help me out here. Otter seal lifetime, I think it would be just about 12 or 14 years that we put some outside the Ball and Lodge up there. And there's not a lot of fast traffic goes past there. It's quite slow traffic as a rule, but it's still as good as the day it was put there. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah. It's certainly a very good product, and if it's prepared properly, the road's prepared properly, and it's put down appropriately and giving it time for it to actually settle, I think is one of the key aspects of the success for Otto Seal. That certainly has been my observation here, and keeping that speed down for as long as you can certainly helps the longevity of that product. Any further? Oh, I see Councillor Byers, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to support Councillor Harper's thoughts around supporting the local contractors to do some of the work in the district. I note the chairman has mentioned that a lot of the people that do this work live in the district, but as far as the cost of the contract goes, the wages is only a portion. And so there are greater benefits to encouraging local participation in some of this work over and above the wages into the community. Thank you.
Yep, no, very good points there, Councillor Byers. And I'm sure staff will take them on board as we go through the procurement policy process. No further questions? Councillor Duffy.
Sorry, I'm on different technology and I can't do the hand thing. I'm sorry. But anyway, my question is, and I know it could be said it's an REFS matter, but it's I think a bit more to it than that. I just noticed noxious weeds on the Seaward Downs Renew Road. They're well over 2 metres high now in a particular area in South Moreton Mains. And this has been ongoing now for a couple of years, and it's got really bad. And I'm just wondering where that program's at, that this has been allowed to happen.
Hartley, do you want to make comment on that?
I can. In terms of, I'd have to follow up on that specific scenario, so it's good to get specific examples. I know for the FOVO Alliance, there is spraying being undertaken at the moment, but for that exact one, I'd have to dig into that a bit more. From a district point of view, I think as we've previously discussed, we have swapped around places. Where, say, previously, like the Tuatapere area in general has been one of the places that's been done last. For this season, we've swapped it around and they've done it first. So it does come down to, unfortunately, a bit of timing from time on occasion and having to look at the programs and whether we have to swap those around. So the Seaward Downs one, I'll follow up on that one as a specific. So it is good to get specific areas or examples.
So you'll provide some feedback directly to Councillor Duffy on that one.
Yes, I will.
Yep. Appreciate that. Councillor Byers, you've still got your hand up. Do you have a further question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on this issue of supposed noxious weeds, I wonder if it's broom or gorse, and be quite good if further on in this agenda we had an item about the quality of water in the region. We have had that in the past, and concerns around the poisoning of the water, and also the loss of the insects and the habitat for a lot of the the wildlife in the area. So just balance that with this desire to get rid of every plant that doesn't quite match up with what you're thinking should be there.
It'll be an interesting workshop discussion, Councillor Byers. Look forward to it. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to raise the matter of road signs and the damage that has been done from time to time. Just recently, we had an incident down at the Dunrobin Valley, Dipton Crossroads, where 4 signs at that corner were bowled over. And, it's just to me, it's an absolute waste of ratepayers' money, and it's a safety issue. So I just wanted to raise that, and also acknowledge the speedy work that South Roads did in replacing those signs as well. But I'm just keen to hear, have other councillors noticed in their area road sign damage?
Open up for anybody who want to make comment on that. Any other councillor experiencing same issues? Would seem not at this stage, Councillor Douglas, but I'm sure we'll all keep an eye out for it. No further comments, questions? That being the case, I'll move that we receive the report, road operations report. Could I have a second for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Harper. All those in favour, just raise your hand. Okay. Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Good discussion, good debate, very enjoyable. Can we go back to the health and safety update? Nick, are you there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have Terry online now.
Excellent, thank you. We'll go to 7.1, health and safety update.
Apologies for missing my call up this morning.
It's all right.
So what we're looking at is January's health and safety update with a dashboard. It's very quiet. A very quiet month was January. No health and safety events were reported. That is pretty common for January, with staff on leave normally in the first 2 to 3 weeks. And the last part of January seen a shift in COVID response. So that meant the focus moved towards business continuity planning and ensuring any of our staff moving to remote working were well set up at home, and ergonomic assessments and things like that. So the focus kind of shifted to preventing pain and discomfort, or those sorts of related injuries. And another little bit I'd just really like to speak to is our kind dashboard. We'll see little change. It's pretty normal for December and January, but also it's not providing the whole, I guess, the whole visual of the wellbeing part at SDC. So you'll see going forward some changes to that part of the health and safety dashboard. We're going to increase our reporting around our wellbeing initiatives, employee participation in wellbeing initiatives, and communicating the training and other opportunities that we're providing our people to support their health and wellbeing alongside safety. So that's something I'm really looking forward to tweaking and improving for you all. Are there any questions that anyone's got specifically around the dashboard for January?
Thank you, Terry, for your presentation. Good report, as always. Look forward to those changes that you've just spoken about. I see Councillor Menzies. I see you have your hand up, so you have a question for Terry.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions. Just with regard to the dashboard, the actions by month, there's nothing in there for January, so can we assume that all those actions that were post 20 days have now been completed?
So there were no actions set for January, and there were also no actions completed in January. There are still actions outstanding that potentially that you'll see in February may be read, or because they may have taken longer. So what that's telling us, there was nothing new added that needed done, and there was nothing closed off either.
Right. Yes, I would have expected then to still see the red and yellow bars in there if there's still work outstanding, I would have thought.
Yeah. I agree. When it comes up when it's completed in that traffic light. So when we complete any actions that were still outstanding, it would probably most likely come up red or orange because it's taken longer than that January to complete them. What I can do is look at how I can incorporate anything that's outstanding or sitting there waiting, if that would be helpful as well.
Yes, I think that would be useful to know, because we want to see these actioned within the time frame if possible, and then understand if there's a barrier to those being completed. And the second question I had was just a clarification around the contractor monitoring comparison. Is that monitoring by the contractor themselves, or is that monitoring by the council of the contractor?
That's the monitoring we're undertaking in regards to the contractor's health and safety performance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menzies. Any other councillor have any questions, comments? The good work that's being done is certainly well reflected in the report. And any other comments or questions from anybody? Okay. Councillor Menzies, you still have your hand up. I presume that you've finished your... That's okay. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
That's right. Cheers. Thanks for that. All right. So I'm happy to move that we receive the health and safety update. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Scott. All those in favour, just raise your hand. All those against? Carried. Thank you. And thank you, Terry, for your presentation, and look forward to those little changes that you've been talking about. It's going to be good. All right, we'll go straight to 7.3, Services and Asset Program, which is on page 31 of your agenda. So, Brendan or...
Brendan will be presenting this.
Yes.
With no doubt input from Nick if required. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. It gives me pleasure to present to you the Services and Assets Program report with figures to January, the end of January. What I thought I might do is start off with the actions from the last report. Obviously, there was a question there which I didn't quite have the answer to in regards to the Eastern Bush Otahu Flat query. But obviously, I did clarify that with an email sent to all councillors after the last Services and Assets meeting. Councillor Douglas was also interested in seeing if we are currently measuring or having an understanding of the price increases from perhaps the 2021 program to 21-22 program. So I have spoken to the asset managers and the finance team. What we are going to look to do is measure price increases between easily relatable tasks or easily relatable projects, and I've given some ideas or some ideas of what that could be, with our curb and channel work, with our footpath rates, concrete and asphalt, perhaps our reseals, and also our road rehabilitation, costs per kilometre. So to give you an idea of some of the things that we can measure where the projects or where the tasks are directly relatable from year to year. So I thought I'd just start off with that, and then wanted to actually shoot over to the capital works program, the critical risk graph. This is something that obviously with our critical risk number one being COVID-19 supply issues, this is something that is evolving, and I'm sure the committee are aware that this is evolving every day. This graph is likely to change next month, especially in item number one with the COVID-19 supply issues. The likelihood and the impact is now is almost certain. It's not just likely anymore. To give you an example, we've just had communications from Permaloo, who are undertaking all the toilet renewals, that 2/3 of their staff are currently off with COVID. So obviously that's has the potential to have quite an impact on our delivery program. There's a meeting which is booked for this Thursday with Permaloo to go back through that program and just get an understanding of, with 2/3 of your workforce off, what that is likely to do to the work program. So I just wanted to raise that, I guess COVID and the impacts both on materials and labour is something that is evolving all the time, and it's almost not something that we can necessarily crystal ball, but we are obviously extending lead times and extending material supply time frames to try and be as accurate as we can with our forecasting for our programs.
So, Brendan, if I may interrupt your presentation, because this is quite a key issue.
It is.
It has an impact on supplies and delivery of our programs, but it also has I would assume, a significant implication on our finances. The cost of materials is escalating significantly.
Absolutely.
And the more delays that occur and the longer the delays are occurring, the more expensive our products are going to be that we need to have. So really appreciate you flagging this as this is a situation that we're facing. But I think this, as soon as we can get some understanding, and I know I'm not trying to get you to a crystal ball, but what sort of financial implications could we be looking at? Is there a 20% increase? Is there a 40% increase? We need to get some sort of understanding of the financial implications that COVID is going to have on our service delivery, because that will certainly have an impact on our budgets, and it will certainly have an impact on our delivery. And if the council needs to reconsider some of the work programs due to the implications of or the impact of COVID, either on service delivery or financial, then we need to have a best understanding at that time, because we may need to reconsider some of those particular projects, because we don't know how bad that's going to hit our bottom line. So I think from a financial perspective, we really need to get our best guesstimate at this stage, and there will be some assumptions, and I can accept that and understand that, but I think it's important that we get a handle on this sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, that is something that obviously we are carefully considering, something that we are considering more in our procurement. So we have considered and have instigated in the past where we can perhaps have a program of work or a piece of work where it is directly relatable to a piece of work that is already occurring. So we're actually, instead of going out for a new tender, we're actually looking at potentially proposing variations to existing contracts. Mm-hmm. So it gives us some security around delivery. The other thing that we're also going to need to consider is exactly what you've said, the volatility of material supply at the moment. We're getting some contractors who will only commit to a 10-day price. So what we're finding, in fact, and what I've discussed with Stuart O'Neill, obviously in his role as commercial and procurement, is how we might mitigate that going forward. And it might be that we change the style of contracts that we actually let. Because of the volatility of the material pricing, it may be that we enter into a cost plus type arrangement, so that the contractor, instead of trying to crystal ball and price a whole lot of risk into their tender price, may actually come back and nominate a percentage on top of the material cost. So they might say, so whatever the material cost is, they will supply the records of purchase, and then they would potentially look at getting, say, a 10% or a 12%, somewhat similar to how our alliance style contracts work.
Yep. So you've got multiple options. You've got a number of items in your toolbox.
Yes.
And that's what you're looking at. So I appreciate that. I was just giving you that signal, wasn't it? Requiring a detailed answer at this stage, just signaling that we as a committee need to be aware of those sort of implications. And if there's a need to reprioritize in some areas because of the significant financial implications, and that is something that we would need to undertake and consider. So I appreciate where you're heading to, so I'll let you carry on with your report. Thanks for that, Brendan.
That's cool. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could circle back to the executive summary.
Sure.
figures to the end of January indicate we're approximately 34% of our $52 million program. The forecasted or the reforecasted February figures for the end of the financial year have actually come up with a target of 45 million, so a reduction of approximately 5.8 million that we're looking to spend this financial year. As I've said there, the estimated final forecast is yet to be approved by council, and the figures are likely to change. It's just estimated at this stage. So the reforecast down, I guess, of that 5.86 million is there's 2.47 in Three Waters, transport other is 2.24 million, and community resources is 1.14 million. So I guess just an explanation around that reforecasting. Like in some cases, the reforecasting is due to projects that we've sensibly deferred to 22-23. That's in some cases due to alignment with other projects for next year. In some cases, it's material and just capacity of subcontractor and or consultants. And in some cases, the reforecast, I guess it's not all doom and gloom. The reforecast in some cases is actually where we have saved money on projects. So I really want to stress that it's not, we're not going to deliver this year some of that reforecasting. In fact, around 303,000, I know in the scheme of 5.86 million, 303,000 is a small amount, but we've saved through the procurement that we went through for the toilet refurbishments. We've saved approximately 303,000 on what the published LTP budgets were. So, as I say, not all doom and gloom.
Well done. That's excellent.
Cheers. In the Three Waters space, obviously there has been a huge focus on getting the stimulus funded work completed. So in the Three Waters space, that has meant they've had to prioritise that work. They have pushed out a couple of projects, or deferred, I should say, a couple of projects into next financial year. So, yeah, look, January monthly turnover was 3 million. Our busiest months, by all accounts, year on year are February, March, and April. And obviously we are making the best of this great weather that we've got at the moment. What else did I want to cover? Oh, the assistant project manager role is now being filled, which is great. So we've had Kelsey Baker. I sent out an email the other day to everyone. Kelsey Baker has started with the project delivery team as an assistant PM. So Kelsey is going to look at assisting us at a lot of that front end work, a lot of the scoping, a lot of the locally funded projects, by all accounts, take a little bit more horsepower. They have a greater investment from the local communities, so it requires a little bit more communication and a little bit more finding out, a few more meetings with community boards and things like that. Obviously, there's a slightly greater interest, so Kelsey's going to greatly assist at their front end. The Tourism Infrastructure Fund, we are actually going to enter into partial agreements at this stage with MB. MB gave us a pretty good list of prerequisite requirements before they would enter into any agreements with council, and those were around all building consents being signed off, all resource consents being signed off, all communication being completed with all the relevant parties. But what MB have actually, and don't get me wrong, we are a fair way through that piece of work, but what MB have now come and said to us is that we can have partial funding agreements for things that don't actually require resource consents, building consents. If I take View Street Manapuri car park, For instance, that's I think 200,000, if my memory serves me rightly, for that project to upgrade that car park. It doesn't require a resource consent, it doesn't require a building consent. So with entering into these early partial funding agreements with MB, it allows us, rather than holding up the whole package of work, to actually start picking things off shortly. So yeah, look, that's a really good outcome. Obviously, again, just mentioned material supplies continue to be a risk, and obviously the ferries getting freight from north to south is still providing a bit of an issue for people with getting materials across the line. So look, I think that was all I wanted to cover off. Hopefully that's giving you a bit of an overview, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Brendan, and appreciate your detailed presentation today. And certainly good to hear the progress with MB and some of the options that you're looking at there, because that's very good progress. Instead of holding the whole project up, you can actually tick some of them off reasonably quickly, so that's good. I would like to turn to Councillor Douglas. I don't see you have a question. However, I note that you did have that concern at the previous Services Asset Committee, and it's been answered. You are content with the information that's been provided, or you seek any additional information?
Yeah, well, perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, I was looking for some of those percentage increases. I mean, you know, we just noticed that diesel has basically doubled in value over a 15-month period, and obviously a lot of the work we do involves diesel. So yeah, I was probably looking, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, a percentage increase in the rehab rates and the resealing rates. What does it actually mean for us as a council, and rate increase? When I mean rate increase, I mean rate of work increases compared to 12 months ago.
Yeah. Okay, I think Brendan will take note of that. So we'll get some of that information for sure. Councillor Ford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Very comprehensive report. Thanks, Brendan. I'm curious about the Permaloo people, if they're a bit off colour, what that'll do to our program. And certainly, are they origins of that company? Are they Southland, or do they refurbish or replace, or how do those projects come together?
Good question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Permaloo are not Southland based. They prefabricate 90, I guess a good 90% of the toilets off-site in their showroom or their workshop, and then they are a unit that is basically shipped to site and hooked up to the existing connections. So yeah, I guess rather than having a contract, and obviously there was a registration of interest that was sent out to, on Gets, to gauge interest from everyone who may have been interested in putting in a tender for that. And in the end, there were only 3 companies that came back that A, they had the capacity, and B, the willingness to actually put in a tender. In the end, it came down to the third person actually pulled out. They went through the registration of interest process, but then as far as actually submitting a tender, they pulled out. So it came down to Exeloo and Permaloo. So it was actually put out to the open market, but yeah, Exeloo and Permaloo were the only 2 that actually ended up responding.
So we're not stuck with a North Island supplier that can't ship this far, or I note that whilst ferries have been a problem, there are some coastal shipping operations sparkled up these days, so that would bring things straight into Christchurch or somewhere, if that were a possibility. But certainly, if it's North Island stuff, we're a bit stuck with it unless we try alternative. So no, that's fine. Thank you. If you could perhaps enlighten me as to where they're actually made, and the refurbishments as such that had been programmed, they would have to be on site, surely.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the refurbishments were put out as a separate tender, and that covered builders and painters and sparkies and plumbers and things like that. So yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, completely separate style of contract.
Thank you. Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report, Brendan. Just looking for an update on the completion date for Winton Library, if you have one, please.
Oh, I never quite know what to prepare for in these meetings, but
everything.
Everything. Look, I have been speaking with Wayne. We have been talking about lots to do with the FF&E and the archive books and the things that are coming across in Brandon Street. And the one piece of information that I didn't glean from Wayne was, I'm sorry, an updated completion date, but I will find out for you and I will send that through.
Thank you very much. And is there an opening planned or information around that would be excellent as well. Thank you.
No problem.
Right, thank you, Councillor Menzies. Just share that information with all the councillors, Brendan. That'd be appreciated.
Will do.
Councillor Owen.
Sorry, through you, Chair. So I could just quickly update you that we need to be out of Brandon Street by the end of March, and so they are currently packing books and working on moving from Brandon Street into the new office shelves that have been put up. Were being put up yesterday and today, so they're just right at the process of moving. Opening date not completely confirmed at this stage. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Fred. I appreciate the update. I didn't spot you coming online there, so thank you for that. Appreciate it. Excellent. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. I'm not sure if you can answer, Brendan. Obviously, you're not Bill, so maybe you can answer. But just with regards to the UV water treatment in Riverton, there's quite a few complaints at the moment about the water. I'm assuming it's related to the low rainfall. Is there, with regards to the taste of the water, is that something that, I don't know too much about it, but is that something that's likely to potentially help, or is the water something that I should be telling people to lodge an RFS with to see if there's another way of dealing with it?
Thanks for your question. Through you, Mr. Chair, my apologies. It's something that it may be a better question that I fire off to Bill and then come back to you.
I see, sorry to interrupt. I see Bill with him. I see you are online. Could you come in and just answer that particular question, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wasn't aware of any taste-related complaints out of Riverton, so we definitely need a few RFSs if we get anything like that coming in. There's right. The new UV is required for compliance, and it will have a slight effect in removing any organics that are in the water that might be, causing a taste issue. But it's not really what it's there for, so it won't be that effective for that purpose.
All right, thanks for coming in, Bill. Councillor Owen, does that assist you there?
Yeah, that's all good. Could you just tell me, Bill, while you're there then, just what the likely response is if a lot of people do put in a complaint about the taste of the water? Is that normally a chlorination response, or how's that normally dealt with?
Well, the water is chlorinated all the time. Mm-hmm. And if, for instance, there was a high organic loading and the chlorine wasn't enough, it'll automatically adjust. So I think what I'm getting at is there's only so much treatment we can do for taste and odour out of the... I think the first response would be the operators would go to those properties that are affected and just confirm that it is not a localised issue and it really is a problem from the source. Having said that, you're quite right. When the rivers are low, there is that potential.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your participation there, Bill. Appreciate it. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 34 on that graph, I just noticed the to do with the end of year forecast and what we've been able to complete so far. When it comes to the community resources, we've only really completed about a sixth of what we've budgeted for. So I assumed some of that's to do with what you were talking about before with the COVID issues, but it looks at this stage of the year like we won't get anywhere near completing that aspect. And I just wonder too, in those actual costs in that column, is there a mistake there where the costs total to December is higher than the cost to the end of January, assuming that they're aggregated?
Through
you, Mr. Oh, thanks, Nick.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Like, if there's a mistake, apologies in the calculations, we'll check that. In regards to community resources, a fair amount of that, there's $1.5 odd million of that toilet works, so that will jump that up quite quickly. Also in that community resources number is a fair chunk of nearly $3 million of the tourism infrastructure funding. So those are projects that they've just talked on that are currently in progress. But the likes of Over Island is progressing well, but it's likely that a proportion of that will go into next year. So you are right, that's probably one area where we're likely to have to carry forward some, but a fair amount of the projects within that are already procured and underway and in design or ready for construction very soon. So it's really just lagging, given the fact that those community resource projects obviously take a higher level of community engagement before they actually start. And given that we were at the start of an LTP year last year, we really only hit the ground running on the 1st of July. So everything's lined up, but it is still likely there'll be a drop in that this year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And just on the graph on page 37, the way it reads, and I'm not sure that reflects really, well, you'll know more than me, but it looks to me like the business case and the evaluation phase uses an awful lot more financial resource than the actual delivery of the project, if you see what I mean. It surely can't be that out of kilter. Perhaps that's just the headings and what's put under those headings. I mean, it looks to me like the paperwork's more than the delivery of the project.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that graph shows what projects are in those phases, not the actual cost of them. So that's showing that there's $2 million of projects in the business case phase and vice versa. So it's not actually dollars spent in those phases.
I understand. Thank you. I've got that wrong. So I just noticed on page 40 that reference to the Kiwi Rail design clearance to do with that Waianawa Bridge. I'm just wondering, is there a possibility of a risk or a issue in the future if we don't meet that compliance standard that Kiwi Rail's got?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I might get Matt, or do we still have Hartley online there? Matt, you might be able to answer that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Duffy, we are working directly with Kiwi Rail around the design and compliance to their standards. So in any design agreed and constructed will have been finalised with and agreed with Kiwi Rail. So that risk is very much front and centre and being managed accordingly.
Thank you. I noticed what you said about the saving money on budgets. We often express concern about unbudgeted expenditure. So this obviously offsets some of that, and we should probably make sure we're aware of that when we're totaling up our unbudgeted expenditure.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Councillor Menzies, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. I understood the decrease in the community resources activity was clarified in note 6 that it's due to a purchase order accrual that has been reversed. Was that the explanation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be one part of it, correct? Yes.
All right. Okay, any further questions or comments? There being none.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I just, there was a number of questions raised around local contractors, and I just wanted to raise with Council again that last year we undertook a number of engagements with all our local contractors, and we've got more suppliers on our preferred and authorised list than we had before. But what has become clear in those discussions with a lot of those smaller contractors out in our district is that they're actually looking for longer term contracts. They're looking for the ability to secure not just one-off projects. They don't have an appetite for smaller one-off projects. They're looking for more scale. So we're currently working through our works program to look at what projects in the next coming years, next 2 or 3 years, could actually be packaged together for local contractors to have a greater appetite to look at. So that's something that we're looking at all the time. And also, obviously, what Mr. Russell had indicated was a number of our contractors actually living in our district. But we also have a very good spread of smaller contractors currently working across our works program as well. Might not be in every district, but it is a very good spread.
Thank you for that update there. I think that's appreciated. No more questions, comments, then I'll move that we receive the Service and Asset Program report. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ruttenclaw. All those in favour, just raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, carried. Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you, Brendan, too. Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Right, the next item is 7.4, health fluoridation of drinking water. Who's representing that? Let's have a look. Oh, you back on.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, councillors. Okay, so this is a briefing document, effectively, that I've been asked to prepare just to update the committee on what's happening in this space. So I'll take it as read, that everyone's had a wee look. The gist of it is that the decision to whether or not to fluoridate a scheme used to rest with the various councils around New Zealand, and there was quite a mixed uptake of that. Some of them just went ahead and did it. Some of them went ahead and didn't. Some of them, by way of referendums, asked their communities whether they wanted it, which is historically the STC approach. And we got pretty close, but didn't quite get the uptake. So we chose not to fluoridate last time around. So the change in this space is that the Ministry of Health is now the body that decides whether or not they will fluoridate or direct a supply to fluoridate. And they're signalling that it's likely to affect all water supplies over 500 people. And they've started the process with a request for information to all the councils that has to be in by the end of this month. So we're putting it together at the moment. But that is largely all we know at this stage. So they're talking about, well, it sounds like there's a possibility there could be a directive in the next year or two, but nothing's certain until this is a big RFI. It's not quite as big as the one for Tomato Atawai, but it'll be a lot of work for them to compile to get a feel for what it's going to cost across the country, how long it's going to take. We don't know if there'll be additional funding available for the work. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're sitting at the moment.
Thanks, Bill. See a few hands are up. Matt, I see you got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just wanted to add to Bill's comments. the letter that we've received from the ministry is I guess I'd characterise it as early days in terms of the fluoridation journey, and one of the aspects of the discussion that'll be interesting to me will be to what extent, given the Three Waters reforms and the proposed timeline associated with the now mandated Three Waters reform, uptake from local government will be to I guess take up the fluoridation challenge from the Ministry of Health in the interim and lead that discussion with their communities ahead of handing over those assets to the new entities. So something to consider, I guess, in terms of timelines, resources, cost of this exercise in conjunction with the Three Waters reform and the transition and the work that will involve, which we'll be discussing further at the next Services and Assets Committee. So just leave that there and open up to questions, and Bill and I will do our best to respond.
Thank you for that. Councillor Owen.
Thank you. So I understand that it's sort of largely out of our control once the decision is made by the powers that be that fluorides to be added. But I would like to turn our focus to how we can empower our communities to do. We know that a lot of our community members don't want fluoridation based on the last lot of consultation that was done with the community. And we also know that with Three Waters reform, that it's highly likely that in the future we would see water meters go in. So I think that there'll be a lot of people quite interested in pursuing options like collecting their own rainwater for drinking water so that they can control whether fluoride goes into that or not themselves. And I'd quite like to see some information proactively go out from councils around how they can make those changes, things they have to do, so that they're empowered to look after themselves the way that they see fit. And I see that's got much wider benefits also to controlling of stormwater flows and things like that as well. So while to a large extent with these things, we're waiting on instructions from other entities and waiting to see how reforms roll out, I think there's a lot we could be doing to empower our local communities now. And would like to see some proactive information about that.
Good point. Very good. Matt, you want to make a comment on that at all? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen, and through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, Councillor Owen, there's definitely a space for local government to be engaging with its local communities around this fluoridation issue in the short to medium term. As to the options for rainwater for drinking water supplies and the ability to achieve that within the current regulatory environment, I'm a bit less confident about whether or not there are plug and play solutions that we can advocate for. But we can certainly assist in disseminating the information and intent from the ministry around fluoridation and the implications for alternative options within the existing regulatory framework.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I think that's one of the key aspects, that we can share as much information as we're able to with our communities.
Absolutely. I just wanted to flag that we may need to temper and manage expectations in that regard around what is actually possible within the existing regulatory framework around alternative drinking water supplies from rainwater.
Yeah, no, I certainly understand and appreciate that. So, that has to be clearly explained with any information that we do pass on to our communities, and how we engage with our communities. That information is part of that. So certainly appreciate that. Bruce, sorry, Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thanks, April. Certainly, I would have to suggest and stipulate that funding would be essential. We surely couldn't be mixed up in this without funding, and of course, 3 waters may well cover that. But I may well have been suspecting this as a simple process, as injection fluoride, similar to fertigation, just another machine. And I hesitate to see the complication, frankly, if perhaps some answer could be made on that. And on the rainwater operations, we have rainwater assurance, as you well know. That's pretty straightforward as long as it rains, and we've had 3 months without. So, but there is still a quality standard required to try and maintain with rainwater operations, and some people are oblivious to how that be. So just if we could perhaps have a comment on the injection fluoride, if that was possible, from Bill or somebody.
Yeah,
right, sure.
I could tackle this one. So we've had, part of the RFI work is preparing estimates of what it may cost. So we've got a bit of a ballpark idea now of what's involved. Personally, I've never been involved with a fluoridated system, so it was a learning curve for me. As a stage in a treatment process, it's not actually as expensive as adding, a compliance stage like UV or filtration. So it's, but it adds up because we've got 8 schemes. So it can vary, but it's probably going to be, 100,000 per scheme for our over 500 schemes. And there'll be an increased OPEX cost as well to maintain it.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose it's also until we get some more clarification from the ministry as to what their levels are going to be and what the requirements are, what their standards are, etc., etc. It'll be at that stage that you'll be able to get a much better handle on the potential costs. But I'll certainly endorse Councillor Ford's comments that whatever the extra cost there is in implementing this, that we certainly tap on central government's door saying there is a cost associated with this and we need some funding for it.
Yeah.
I see our Chief Executive. You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. On this particular subject, I do have a little bit of experience, and to just maybe add a little to Councillor Ford's question, the actual adding of fluoride to the treatment as a dosing unit that works on the proportional to the flow that's coming past the treatment plant at the time. One of the complications is that the raw material has to be stored, has to be handled. So it's not just the dosing unit, it's the storage, supply, logistics, and it can add to an extra operational component for the treatment plant. So it's not just as small as it sounds.
Yep. Good point. Thank you for that clarification and your insight to that particular issue. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I find the timing of this whole thing almost quite bizarre and frustrating, with everything that's been thrown at local government, and now all of a sudden on the side they're throwing something that they took control over, and now it looks like we're having to potentially pay for a decision that we can't have any too much say in what gets made. So I find that quite frustrating. But look, even looking at the nature of our water supplies, with the amount of water that actually gets drunk for the potential benefit that they're saying that you're going to get out of the fluoridation, I mean, we're going to have the shiniest teeth on cows in the country, because so much of our water doesn't actually reach human consumption. And I really do wonder about, especially in our schemes, the cost benefit for what it's actually going to be. And and Councillor Kramer, you were at the Bluster Community Board meeting where this was raised as well from the community feedback side of things, and I think that's really important. That when the community had their voice back in 2007, and it didn't cross the line then, but how do we ensure that the community views come through this process, even if it's something that we're not handling, that the Ministry of Health are aware that it might not be fit for purpose or accepted in our community, especially given the fact that we're going to have to pay significant money for it.
All very valid comments there, Councillor Scott. I see, Matt, you've got your hand up. You wish to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Scott, through you, Mr. Chair, without sticking too fine a point on it, I'm not sure we've been very clear in the reporting. I wanted to be sure that we were. Our understanding of the process to date is that there won't be a requirement from local government to establish fluoridation in all of the drinking water supplies ahead of the Three Waters reform transition. I think what the ministry is seeking at this stage is information on cost, and I think to your point, Councillor Scott, and to Councillor Owen's point, furnishing the discussion with community views is a way in which local government can potentially ensure that the community voice is heard and understood ahead of the transition. But our understanding, at least to this point, is that it won't be an obligation on local government to establish fluoridation ahead of the Three Waters transition. The letter that we received from the Ministry of Health indicated that there may be some incentives offered for local government entities who are prepared to launch early on fluoridation as a bit of a carrot or incentive to get on board. But as I say, our understanding at this stage is just it's an information gathering exercise.
So therefore, sorry, Councillor Scott, continue.
I was going to say those carrots make me very sceptical when they bring a big carrot in front of you. There's normally a reason.
Yeah, good point. But I think that balance that Matt has raised and Councillor Owen also, just in support of both of those comments, is that if we get the comments from our communities at the same time as our financial implications, then that information does get into the ministry as well. Councillor Byers, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the carrot, just on the carrot, it's interesting that the carrot has been waved in front of the councils or this council to do something that the community doesn't want. And I think it really highlights one of the issues around losing control of our water infrastructure. And it makes this group that's standing up to the government and saying, look, that's one option for councils to manage infrastructure, but it's not the only one. And to me, it just makes it even more important for councils to get behind this group and support this voice of community in their appeal to the government to perhaps consider other options.
Yes, yep, you're quite right. There is that opportunity. Mayor Tom.
Oh, just to add on to Matt's points, this is an information gathering exercise, and just to be clear, there's no carrot as such. We just better be careful how we word that, because the letter actually says to support early adoption, the ministry has a limited amount of capital works funding available for local authorities that are willing and able to begin the capital works to fluoridate by the end of 2022. And before that, it's saying, please note, local authorities do not need to wait for a potential direction from me. So what Mr. Bloomfield was saying, there's possibly is going to be a potential direction from him to start fluoridating. So we just got to be careful of that definition of the carrot.
Okay, thank you for that clarifications. Appreciate it. Further comments? Nick, did you have something? All right, okay. Sorry, Councillor Duffy, yes?
Oh, just with the whole debate, and I think it's important, just like the vaccines for COVID, that the public are informed of the real story. There's a lot of false information about fluoride as far as I can see, and we do need to balance that against the horrendous stories we see of young children and the state of their teeth in various parts of the country. And responsibility is, to support programs that actually give a health benefit to people.
Very well put. Any further questions? Councillor Byers, I see you got your hand up. Do you have another question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Just back to Chief Executive's comments around the storing of this fluoride. I assume it's because it's highly toxic, it requires some specialist storage facilities. And it's just a lot of people, I think the community said no, they don't want it because it is a toxin. And to Councillor Duffy's comment that the children's teeth are rotting, well, that's quite right, but I haven't seen any Ministry of Health directive suggesting that children eat less sugar and perhaps brush their teeth more.
Way to go, Councillor Duffy.
Oh, there's an example. It is definitely not a toxin.
Exactly. You beat me to it. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We did have various submissions come to council over many years from District Health Board, and we had some of their specialists come along and they gave us photographs of some children with shocking teeth. In fact, one child had all the teeth out at 5-year-old. So I think there is very good evidence there that some children need that. Of course, we can't control how much fizz they drink, but fluoride would be one way of attempting to manage that. So, yeah, there is lots of evidence there, and I'm supporting. So, yeah, that's my 6 pence worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. And, I know that for a number of years, there has been a lot of information put out by the ministry, your local GPs, health professionals about the amount of sugar that's in fizzy drinks and how much sugar people are eating and what it's doing to your body. You go into most GP practices and you'll see a little placard with lots of little wee bags with sugars on it and tells you how much sugar's in lemonade or Coke or anything like that. So there's been a campaign for quite some time with regards to the amount of sugar that people actually are drinking and the effects that it actually has. All right, are there any further questions, comments? Don't think there is, so I'm happy to move that we receive the report. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Mayor Tong. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Carried. Thank you. That's the end of the Service and Asset meeting. Julie, when's your meeting start?
We don't have a meeting as such. We're going into workshop. So I would suggest that we have a break now for what?
Okay.
10 minutes.
Can we go offline? And I've got a couple of questions that I would like to ask offline, please. So Fiona, can you put us offline, please?
Ricardo.